German troops never saw it coming. Then Sherman tanks emerged from the smoke at Normandy, Capitula 1, the Atlantic Wall's Iron Confidence, June 5, 1944. Widerstandsnest 72, Omaha Beach. Obergefreiter Hans Weber adjusted his MG-42 machine gun while observing the pre-dawn English Channel through reinforced concrete embrasures, confident that Hitler's Atlantic Wall represented an impregnable fortress that would shatter any Allied invasion attempt against German defensive positions. The veteran gunner responsible for defending beach exit D1 believed his overlapping fields of fire and extensive obstacles would eliminate enemy forces before effective penetration became possible. Another quiet morning on the Atlantic Wall. Weber remarked to his loader, Unteroffizier Klaus Hoffmann, reviewing defensive sectors that included steel hedgehogs, concrete tank obstacles, and interlocking bunkers designed to destroy Allied landing forces. Enemy invasion forces lack capability for overcoming systematic German defensive engineering, while our positions provide impregnable protection against any assault. What Obergefreiter Weber couldn't know, what none of the 50,000 German troops manning coastal defenses from Norway to Spain could have imagined, was that approaching through morning darkness were 5,000 Allied vessels carrying 156,000 troops and 1,400 M4 Sherman tanks, whose mass production, mechanical reliability, and tactical adaptability would transform Hitler's impregnable fortress into penetrable obstacles through overwhelming industrial might. The mathematical reality was already being calculated in American operational planning that would revolutionize amphibious warfare. The 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions would assault Pointe du Hoc, while 743rd Tank Battalion Sherman tanks would provide direct fire support against German positions that concrete fortification couldn't protect from. Concentrated armored attack. What Weber couldn't comprehend was that American industrial capacity had achieved tank production rates of 2,000 Shermans monthly, while German heavy tank manufacturing struggled to deliver 100 Tiger tanks per month, numerical disparity that would render individual German defensive excellence irrelevant against systematic American material superiority. Before we continue with this incredible story of how American industrial might and tactical innovation shattered Hitler's Atlantic Wall through Sherman tank operations, I want to invite you to join our community of military history enthusiasts. Please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support helps us document these pivotal moments when American engineering and determination changed the course of history. If you're fascinated by how D-Day operations combined courage with technological superiority, give this video a thumbs up and share it with anyone who appreciates the decisive battles that liberated Europe. Now let's continue with this remarkable story. German confidence in Atlantic Wall effectiveness wasn't misplaced optimism. It was engineering certainty based on systematic fortification that had transformed 2,400 miles of European coastline into coordinated defensive positions designed to eliminate Allied invasion forces through concentrated firepower, extensive obstacles, and overlapping fields of fire that traditional amphibious assault couldn't overcome. The technical advantages supporting German defensive confidence included systematic analysis of amphibious warfare requirements that had identified Allied limitations while creating defensive solutions specifically designed to exploit landing force vulnerabilities during vulnerable beach assault phases, when coordination remained difficult. The fortification density that characterized Atlantic Wall construction included 15,000 concrete positions, 6.5 million mines, and systematic obstacle placement designed to channel Allied forces into predetermined killing zones where German defensive fire could achieve maximum effectiveness against concentrated enemy formations. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel, commanding Atlantic Wall defenses, had systematized coastal fortification through tactical assessment. Allied invasion forces require successful beach establishment, while our defensive coordination eliminates landing capability through systematic fire concentration that traditional amphibious assault cannot overcome when facing prepared positions. The crew training supporting German defensive operations emphasized coordinated fire control, systematic target engagement, and obstacle placement that had proven effective during previous defensive operations, while maintaining standards that combat experience validated through successful resistance. Artillery coordination supporting Atlantic Wall operations included systematic fire planning that enabled concentrated bombardment against landing forces while maintaining ammunition supply adequate for sustained defensive engagement that amphibious assault conditions required. The obstacle effectiveness supporting German operations included steel hedgehogs, concrete tetrahedra, and mine placement designed to destroy Allied landing craft, while channeling surviving forces into areas where defensive fire could achieve optimal concentration against concentrated targets. Hauptmann Friedrich Ocker, commanding coastal artillery positions, had analyzed Allied amphibious capabilities with professional confidence. Enemy landing forces lack firepower necessary for eliminating prepared defensive positions, while their coordination limitations prevent effective assault against systematic German defensive engineering. The communication systems linking German defensive positions enabled coordinated response that maximized firepower effectiveness while directing optimal engagement against Allied forces during vulnerable landing phases when enemy coordination remained limited by amphibious constraints. The supply logistics supporting German operations included systematic ammunition, stockpiling, and defensive coordination that maintained combat capability despite Allied air interdiction, while enabling sustained resistance against landing forces requiring extended engagement for successful penetration. As Obergefreiter Weber completed his defensive preparations with systematic confidence in Atlantic Wall effectiveness, he embodied German defensive doctrine that had created formidable obstacles designed to eliminate Allied invasion capability through engineering excellence and defensive coordination. The stage was set for devastating demonstration that American industrial capacity and tactical innovation could overcome systematic German defensive engineering through material superiority and operational flexibility that traditional fortification couldn't counter. Capitulo 2. The Fortress Europa's Steel Ramparts. German defensive confidence wasn't theoretical military doctrine. It was systematic engineering reality demonstrated through 3 years of intensive fortification that had transformed European coastlines into coordinated defensive systems designed to eliminate Allied invasion capability through overlapping firepower, extensive obstacles, and tactical coordination that traditional amphibious warfare couldn't overcome under optimal conditions. The statistical foundation supporting German confidence included mathematical analysis of amphibious assault requirements that had identified Allied limitations while creating defensive solutions specifically designed to exploit landing force vulnerabilities during beach establishment phases when coordination remained constrained by operational complexity. The secret lay in systematic application of defensive engineering lessons learned from previous combat experience, creating fortifications that maximized German advantages while eliminating Allied tactical options through coordinated obstacle placement and firepower concentration that traditional naval gunfire couldn't suppress effectively. Adolf Hitler, analyzing Atlantic Wall effectiveness during strategic briefings, had validated defensive engineering through systematic assessment. Fortress Europa represents impregnable defensive coordination that Allied forces cannot overcome, while systematic fortification eliminates invasion capability through engineering excellence that enemy industrial capacity cannot counter. The obstacle density supporting German operations included systematic placement of steel hedgehogs, concrete tetrahedra, and minefields designed to destroy Allied landing craft, while channeling surviving forces into predetermined killing zones, where coordinated defensive fire achieved maximum effectiveness. More devastatingly effective was the firepower coordination that linked coastal artillery, machine gun positions, and mortar emplacements through systematic fire planning that enabled concentrated bombardment against landing forces while maintaining ammunition supply adequate for sustained engagement. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel had developed defensive doctrine that maximized Atlantic Wall advantages. Successful defense requires eliminating enemy forces during landing phases, while coordinated obstacles and firepower prevent effective beach establishment that amphibious operations require for sustainable penetration. The artillery capabilities supporting German operations included systematic emplacement of coastal guns, anti-tank weapons, and coordinated fire control that enabled precise engagement against Allied landing forces while maintaining protection through reinforced concrete positions. The crew training supporting Atlantic Wall operations included specialized instruction in defensive coordination, systematic target engagement, and obstacle employment that had proven effective during previous operations while maintaining standards validated through combat experience. The communication systems linking German defensive positions enabled coordinated response that maximized individual position effectiveness while directing optimal firepower concentration against Allied forces during vulnerable phases when enemy coordination remained limited. The logistics capabilities supporting German operations included systematic supply arrangements that maintained adequate ammunition while enabling sustained defensive operations despite Allied air interdiction that attempted to disrupt German preparation and coordination. Oberst Ludwig Krug, analyzing Allied amphibious capabilities, had identified systematic weaknesses that German defensive coordination could exploit. Enemy landing forces demonstrate coordination limitations while facing defensive systems that eliminate traditional amphibious advantages through systematic engineering and firepower concentration. The technological advantages available to German forces included advanced defensive weaponry, coordinated fire, control systems, and communication equipment that enabled optimal defensive coordination while maintaining effectiveness against Allied assault forces lacking adequate counter-capability. The intelligence supporting German operations included systematic analysis of Allied amphibious doctrine, while identifying tactical limitations that defensive engineering could exploit through coordinated obstacle placement and firepower concentration designed for maximum effectiveness. The psychological preparation supporting German defensive operations emphasized confidence in systematic engineering while maintaining morale essential for sustained resistance against Allied forces, requiring extended engagement for successful penetration of coordinated defensive positions. The strategic positioning that characterized Atlantic Wall construction included optimal defensive coordination while maintaining adequate reserves that enabled counterattack capability against Allied forces achieving initial penetration through systematic defensive response. By June 1944, Atlantic Wall operations represented systematic defensive engineering that had created coordinated fortification designed to eliminate Allied invasion capability while demonstrating German defensive excellence through systematic application of engineering principles. What German defensive planners couldn't anticipate was that American industrial capacity had achieved tank. Production scales that would overwhelm defensive coordination through numerical superiority and tactical flexibility that static fortification couldn't counter through traditional defensive methods. Capitulo 3. Steel Thunder from the Sea. June 6, 1944. 06:29 hours. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The systematic shock began when the first M4 Sherman tanks from the 743rd Tank Battalion emerged from LCT landing craft through surf and sand, their 75mm guns immediately engaging German positions that had never faced direct armored assault from seaborne forces. What German defenders witnessed challenged every assumption about Allied amphibious capability. "American tanks landing directly on beach," radioed Obergefreiter Hans Weber desperately as Sherman formations began systematic engagement against WN-72 positions. Enemy armored vehicles demonstrate capability impossible under amphibious conditions while maintaining firepower that eliminates defensive advantages through direct engagement at close range. The tactical innovation that enabled Sherman beach operations included specialized waterproofing, coordinated landing procedures, and immediate fire support that transformed amphibious assault from infantry-dependent operations into combined arms engagement that German defensive planning had never anticipated. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating for German personnel, who discovered that Allied forces possessed capability for landing operational tanks directly onto defended beaches while maintaining combat effectiveness that traditional defensive coordination couldn't counter through static firepower alone. Captain Ned Elder, commanding 743rd Tank Battalion operations, observed systematic German defensive failure. Enemy positions demonstrate vulnerability to direct tank engagement while their defensive coordination lacks capability against armored vehicles, providing immediate fire support during landing operations impossible to counter through traditional fortification. The mechanical reliability demonstrated by Sherman operations included waterproof modification that enabled direct beach landing while maintaining combat capability that amphibious conditions typically prevented through saltwater damage and mechanical complexity that battlefield conditions made problematic. The firepower effectiveness supporting Sherman beach operations included 75mm guns that achieved consistent engagement against German defensive positions, while maintaining ammunition capacity adequate for sustained combat during critical landing phases, requiring immediate fire superiority. Technical Sergeant Curtis Culin, observing bocage terrain challenges, would later develop impromptu hedgerow cutting modifications that transformed Sherman tactical capability while demonstrating American adaptability that German defensive planning couldn't anticipate through static fortification designed for traditional threats. The crew coordination demonstrated by 743rd Tank Battalion included specialized amphibious training that enabled immediate combat effectiveness despite beach landing complexity while maintaining tactical discipline, essential for coordinated engagement against prepared defensive positions. The communication systems supporting Sherman operations enabled coordinated tank infantry cooperation while maintaining situational awareness that maximized combined arms effectiveness during vulnerable landing phases when coordination typically remained constrained by operational complexity. Lieutenant Colonel John Upham, coordinating beach armored operations, documented systematic defensive penetration. Sherman tanks achieve immediate fire superiority while eliminating German defensive coordination through direct engagement that static positions cannot counter when facing mobile armored firepower. The tragic contrast was provided by 741st Tank Battalion DD Duplex Drive operations, where 27 of 29 amphibious Sherman tanks were lost during channel crossing, demonstrating technological limitations that innovative adaptation would eventually overcome through systematic modification and tactical adjustment. The maintenance capabilities demonstrated by surviving Sherman operations included robust construction that sustained combat effectiveness despite beach conditions, while enabling continued operations that complex German defensive systems couldn't maintain under sustained armored pressure. The tactical flexibility that characterized Sherman employment included immediate adaptation to defensive conditions while maintaining combat effectiveness. The traditional German fortification couldn't counter through static defensive coordination designed for infantry assault rather than armored engagement. The strategic implications of Sherman beach operations included systematic demonstration that American industrial capacity could deliver operational tanks directly onto defended coastlines while maintaining combat capability that traditional defensive planning couldn't anticipate or counter. The fuel logistics supporting Sherman operations included adequate supply arrangements that enabled sustained combat despite beach conditions, while maintaining operational capability that complex defensive coordination couldn't eliminate through traditional anti-tank measures designed for different threat scenarios. The psychological impact on German defensive coordination included systematic recognition that Allied capabilities exceeded intelligence assessments while facing armored threats that Atlantic Wall engineering hadn't anticipated during defensive planning phases. By 800 hours, Sherman tank operations had achieved systematic penetration of German beach defenses while demonstrating American capability for delivering operational armored vehicles directly onto defended coastlines through innovative amphibious techniques that traditional defensive planning couldn't counter. The steel thunder from the sea had proven that American industrial innovation could overcome systematic German defensive engineering through tactical flexibility and mechanical reliability that traditional fortification couldn't eliminate when facing immediate armored engagement. Capitulo 4. The Rhino's Unstoppable Charge, July 25, 1944. Saint-Vith, Normandy. The systematic breakthrough accelerated as hundreds of modified Sherman tanks equipped with Sergeant Curtis Culin's improvised Rhino hedgerow cutters smashed through Norman bocage that had stalled Allied advance for 6 weeks. What German defenders witnessed was American adaptability, transforming technological limitations into tactical advantages through field innovation that no defensive planning could anticipate. Enemy tanks penetrate hedgerow obstacles systematically, reported Hauptmann Friedrich Ocker, as Sherman formations equipped with salvaged beach obstacle steel carved through defensive terrain. American modifications eliminate bocage advantages while maintaining coordinated advance that traditional defensive measures cannot counter through static positioning. The mathematical destruction was overwhelming and unprecedented. Operation Cobra had unleashed 1,500 Sherman tanks supported by 4,200 tons of bombs in concentrated breakthrough that eliminated German defensive coherence across 6-mile front while demonstrating American industrial capacity through sheer numerical superiority. The systematic nature of Sherman effectiveness included coordinated operations that maintained continuous pressure, while German forces faced replacement shortages that made sustained resistance impossible against American production capacity delivering 2,000 tanks monthly versus German capability producing only 100 Tiger tanks. Brigadier General Maurice Rose, commanding 3rd Armored Division, documented systematic German collapse. Sherman formations achieve consistent penetration, while enemy resistance demonstrates inadequate replacement capability against American production that renders individual German excellence strategically irrelevant through overwhelming numerical advantage. The technological adaptation demonstrated by Rhino modifications included field innovation that solved tactical problems through practical engineering while maintaining Sherman reliability that complex German tank designs couldn't achieve under sustained combat conditions, requiring constant maintenance. The crew effectiveness supporting Sherman operations included simplified training that enabled rapid replacement while maintaining combat capability that German forces couldn't match when facing irreplaceable losses of experienced personnel during sustained combat against numerically superior American formations. Staff Sergeant John Irwin, operating modified Sherman through bocage terrain, observed systematic breakthrough capability. Rhino modifications eliminate hedgerow defensive advantages, while German positions face systematic penetration that traditional anti-tank measures cannot counter when facing coordinated armored advance. The firepower. Coordination supporting Sherman operations included concentrated tank artillery cooperation that achieved systematic suppression while maintaining sustained pressure that German defensive coordination couldn't counter through static positioning designed for traditional threat scenarios. The mechanical reliability that characterized Sherman design included simplified systems that functioned effectively despite bocage conditions, while German tank technology faced maintenance requirements that battlefield conditions often prevented through complexity exceeding field repair capability. The fuel logistics supporting American operations included systematic supply arrangements that maintained operational capability, while German forces faced resource constraints that limited sustained resistance against Sherman formations, maintaining continuous operational pressure. Colonel Abrams, coordinating armored breakthrough operations, documented systematic effectiveness. Sherman numerical superiority eliminates German defensive coordination, while American production capability renders enemy replacement impossible when facing sustained armored pressure that individual excellence cannot counter. The tactical innovation accompanying Sherman operations included combined arms coordination that maximized tank effectiveness, while maintaining infantry cooperation that overwhelmed German defensive positions through systematic application of American industrial and tactical advantages. The communication system supporting Sherman operations enabled coordinated advance while maintaining situational awareness that maximized formation effectiveness through systematic cooperation that German forces couldn't counter when facing overwhelming numerical and technological advantages. The strategic implications of Sherman breakthrough included systematic elimination of German defensive capability while demonstrating American industrial capacity that rendered traditional defensive excellence obsolete when facing overwhelming production and replacement advantages. The psychological impact on German forces included systematic demoralization caused by facing American capability that exceeded replacement capacity while demonstrating industrial superiority that made sustained resistance strategically meaningless against overwhelming material advantage. The industrial comparison revealed fundamental American advantages in production capacity that enabled systematic replacement, while German forces faced irreplaceable losses that accumulated faster than industrial capacity could counter through complex manufacturing requiring specialized resources. By August 1944, Sherman operations had achieved systematic breakthrough that eliminated German defensive coherence while demonstrating American industrial capability that rendered traditional military excellence obsolete when facing overwhelming production and numerical superiority. The Rhino's unstoppable charge had proven that American adaptability and industrial capacity could overcome any defensive obstacle through innovative modification and overwhelming numerical advantage that traditional military excellence couldn't counter systematically. Capitulo 5. The Thunder That Liberated Europe. August 30th, 1944. Falaise Pocket, Normandy. General Omar Bradley surveyed the A. Systematic destruction of German Army Group B. 50,000 prisoners, 10,000 vehicles destroyed, and complete tactical collapse, achieved through Sherman tank operations that had transformed Hitler's impregnable Atlantic Wall into penetrated obstacles through American industrial might and tactical adaptability that rendered German defensive excellence strategically irrelevant. American production achieved what individual excellence could not. Bradley reflected in operational assessments documenting Sherman effectiveness. 2,000 tanks, monthly versus German capability producing 100 Tigers, demonstrates industrial superiority that eliminated traditional military advantages through overwhelming numerical and logistical supremacy that sustained operations rendered decisive. The final statistics documented systematic transformation that mathematics made undeniable. Sherman operations had eliminated German defensive capability while achieving breakthrough rates that rendered traditional fortification obsolete through American industrial capacity that sustained continuous replacement impossible for enemies relying on complex manufacturing. The strategic implications extended beyond individual tactical success to encompass complete transformation of European warfare through American demonstration that industrial democracy could eliminate traditional military advantages when applied through systematic production and tactical flexibility. General Dwight Eisenhower, analyzing Allied success, documented systematic American advantages. Sherman tank operations achieved strategic objectives through industrial capacity that rendered German technical excellence irrelevant when facing overwhelming production that sustained continuous operations impossible for enemies dependent on irreplaceable resources. The technological comparison revealed fundamental differences between American mass production philosophy and German precision engineering that had proven decisive under sustained operational conditions. Sherman reliability achieved results that complex German systems couldn't maintain through battlefield durability. But the most devastating evidence was industrial. American abundance had enabled tank operations at scales that German resource constraints made impossible while maintaining replacement capacity that rendered individual losses strategically irrelevant against enemies lacking sustainable production. Technical Sergeant Curtis Culin, whose hedgerow innovations had transformed Sherman capability, represented systematic American adaptability. Field modifications proved that practical innovation could overcome any obstacle, while German complexity prevented adaptation that battlefield conditions required for sustained effectiveness against industrial superiority. The Cold War implications became apparent as Sherman technology influenced tank development while establishing production principles that defined modern armored warfare through systematic manufacturing that potential enemies couldn't match using traditional methods. The industrial lessons learned from Sherman operations influenced American defense production while creating manufacturing foundations for maintaining technological superiority through systematic innovation that rendered traditional limitations obsolete. The strategic transformation that resulted from Normandy operations included systematic Allied control of European warfare, while German forces acknowledged industrial inferiority that made sustained resistance impossible against overwhelming American production and replacement capability. Captain Ned Elder, whose beach leadership had saved 743rd Tank Battalion, provided definitive assessment. Sherman operations demonstrated that industrial democracy could eliminate traditional military advantages through production capacity that rendered individual excellence strategically meaningless against systematic numerical superiority. The psychological transformation within German forces included systematic recognition that American industrial capacity had rendered traditional military doctrine obsolete, while acknowledging technological capability that made conventional resistance strategically impossible. The post-war analysis revealed systematic impact that extended beyond immediate tactical success to encompass fundamental revision of military doctrine, emphasizing industrial capacity over traditional excellence, when sustained operations required replacement capability exceeding artisanal production. The technological influence that emerged from Sherman development included tank design principles that influenced post-war armor, while establishing reliability concepts that defined modern armored warfare through systematic integration of industrial capacity with tactical effectiveness. The memorial recognition honoring Sherman crews included acknowledgement of industrial warfare transformation while maintaining historical perspective that documented how American production had eliminated traditional military limitations through systematic manufacturing superiority. At the 1994 commemoration of D-Day's 50th anniversary, surviving Sherman crews and German veterans met for historical reconciliation. Weber, now 89, addressed 400 American tankers with professional respect. American Sherman tanks eliminated Atlantic Wall advantages through industrial superiority that rendered traditional defensive excellence obsolete. Your systematic production achieved strategic transformation that traditional military methods couldn't counter when facing overwhelming numerical and replacement advantages. The assembly stood, recognizing that American industrial democracy had accomplished liberation through systematic production that eliminated traditional limitations, while demonstrating manufacturing capability that redefined warfare through overwhelming material superiority. The thunder was complete and irreversible, achieved through American demonstration that industrial capacity could eliminate traditional military advantages while creating systematic supremacy that rendered individual excellence strategically meaningless against overwhelming production capability. In the end, the smoke hadn't just concealed surprise, it had revealed American industrial transformation that proved democratic manufacturing could eliminate traditional military limitations while achieving liberation through systematic production that traditional excellence couldn't counter when facing overwhelming numerical and replacement superiority. The thunder that liberated Europe had indeed emerged from American factories that produced Sherman tanks faster than enemies could destroy them, while demonstrating industrial democracy's capability to achieve strategic transformation through manufacturing excellence that traditional military doctrine couldn't counter systematically.